guest is Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer, the new ranking member of the House Small Business Committee. He's from Missouri, a great state. He's also a member of the Financial Services Committee and has made it a top priority of his to ensure access to PPP for small business owners. Representative Luetkemeyer, I have to start saying I love your Twitter handle. You have a great last name, but Rep. Blaine is much easier on all of us in the number of spaces. So you're already innovating there. But let me ask you, now as you come into your new role as ranking member of the Small Business Committee, what's on your dashboard? What do you think we need to get right? What's the balance and equity between the federal government helping a little and helping too much?
Well, I think first we need to make sure the PPP program that was rolled out with the bill at the end of December is rolled out successfully. So far, it looks pretty good. We've got roughly 400,000 loans that have already been out. We've got about $35 billion out the door, average size loan about $87,000. So it's targeted roughly to where it needs to be. I think the first rollout was successful. We basically saved about 50 million jobs. And I think so our first job on the committee should be to make sure that this is successful and make sure that money goes to the places it needs to go, because it's a pretty targeted program, which I think is very good. I think after that, we just need to work with the administration to make sure we don't overregulate or raise taxes too much. We showed in the first 3 years of the Trump administration until the pandemic hit that lower taxes, lower regulations were very helpful to get entrepreneurs engaged, for them to be willing to take the risks it takes to start a new business and continue to grow that business. Steve, I'm sure you're aware that basically 70% of all the new jobs in this country are created by small businesses, and they employ roughly about half the people in this country. So they're a huge driver of our economy, and they're the entrepreneurs, the ones who innovate, take risks, and we need to make the environment as best we can for them to do that. And I want to work with the administration to make sure that this continues. I think we've got the template here on how this can be successful, and I'm looking forward to the work here this coming year.
Well, thank you for that, Congressman. I was looking at your tweets, and you did have one that I find interesting. You sort of referred to it, but you said you're talking to your constituents. You're saying underserved small businesses that didn't receive a first draw from PPP in 2020 can now apply. I guess I'm interested in this question of where the lines hit in terms of small businesses and reaching out. When I talked to your predecessor, Steve Chabot, about this, he said, look, there are some companies that have they had a level of employees and we didn't hit them, didn't touch them. Is that what you're talking about, underserved businesses? And is that have you gone deeper into what constitutes a small business that can get support?
Yeah, I think last time we drew the line at 500 employees. This time we drew the line at 300 employees to make it more targeted to the smaller businesses yet. There was some concern by some people that the bigger small businesses shouldn't have received the aid, whenever some of them in some situations were struggling just as much as the mom and pop shops. But you have small manufacturers that for one reason or another we're struggling. So I think it continues. This program has got a lot of improvements in it. And I think we need to continue to watch it and see if we need to, again, tweak the program as we go. I know that during the initial PPP rollout, Secretary of the Treasury Mnuchin, as well as the SBA director, were very responsive in trying to get new information out and answer the frequently asked questions for folks. I'm satisfied that will happen again with Chair Yellen. Secretary Yellen, I've worked with her before. She's a great lady. I think that we can find some common ground there to be helpful on the PPP program. And our new SBA folks are continuing to work very hard to get this rolled out. And so far, we've actually had minimal problems compared to what we had last time. Not that there have been some glitches, but so far it's been very successful. And the few things that have been popped up, I think we're going to be able to get those questions answered pretty quickly.
This may be an unfair question because I don't know where your jurisdiction ends and others start, but I had the pleasure of interviewing Representative McHenry yesterday, who's on the Financial Services Committee in ranking. We talked a little bit about sort of reputational scoring of not only people, but of businesses. And he says, there is a lot that we can do to sort of help open the spigots, if you will, in terms of getting small businesses more capital and more financing opportunities. And he was very, very direct. He says, we haven't even scratched the surface on the kinds of things that we can do to help create a more level playing field and more opportunities on that. Do you work at all with him? Are you looking forward to working with the kind of finance side of capital as opposed to just the regulatory side of the small business ecosystem?
Yeah, I also sit on the Financial Services Committee, and I'm the ranking member on the Financial Institution Subcommittee, which oversees all the banks and credit unions, mortgage bankers, and all the regulators. So I deal with the FDIC, Federal Reserve, CFPB, all those folks on a regular basis. So, yeah, I work with Patrick. We're deeply involved in trying to make sure that these businesses have access to capital. On the Small Business Committee, where I chair now, or the ranker on it now, yes, that's going to be very important. Continue to have access to capital, affordable capital. We want to make sure we keep interest rates low, and we have these programs that were rolled out in the initial PPP program are funded, and they will continue to be rolled supported. I realize that Secretary Mnuchin actually rolled back a few of these programs that were not being utilized very much, and used those dollars in to be able to help fund the new PPP program. So I think we just need to work with the administration, and I think Chairman McHenry, or Ranking Member McHenry, has done a good job of being able to work with the different entities to make sure that access to capital is there, to shore up the markets so that there is plenty of liquidity in the markets, plenty of liquidity in the financial services folks, as well as the industries that buy and sell securities. There was a problem last spring, quite frankly, with regards to municipal bonds and inability of them to be traded, and so there were the lack of revenues coming in undercut those markets, and so we did some things to underpin those markets, to shore them up, to be able to allow the state and local governments to continue to buy and sell and fund themselves and the liquidity they needed. So yes, there's a lot of this. It's a pretty big picture that you have to look at when you talk about access to capital. It's pretty involved, but I think Mr. McHenry's done a great job of that, and we want to continue to work on the Small Business Committee with the SBA to provide those kind of programs as well, to have the small business folks have access to the kind of capital they need to, number one, continue to exist, and number two, to be able to allow those entrepreneurs to get into the small businesses and help create those jobs that are going to actually grow our economy and get us out of this mess.
Congressman, I'm going to ask you, what your gut feeling is. Do you think we're through the worst of the COVID impacts? COVID really slaughtered so many small businesses in this country, and I think the level of devastation that has hit that community is something hard to get our heads wrapped around. I do a lot of this kind of interviews with people around the nation, and I still think we're going to be dealing with this for a very long time. But that's my view. But do you feel like we're through the worst of it? What do your constituents feel? What do small businesses on your street down the street think about the situation? And what does their gut tell them? What does your gut tell you?
That's a great question, Steve. I think we probably got the worst behind us, but you're right. I agree with you. We're not out of the woods yet. But I want to point out a couple things here. My state of Missouri, we took the lockdown off in mid-May, and as a result, our 2020 revenues for the state of Missouri were actually up 5.5%. Unemployment rate today is 4.4%, with 200,000 jobs sitting there waiting for people to fill them. Now, over the last week or so here, I've seen several states, Michigan, Illinois, and California, that have actually stopped some of their lockdowns as well. Washington, D.C. mayor has stopped some of their lockdowns. As these lockdowns roll off, I think you'll see the kind of economic activity that we saw here in Missouri, where the businesses jump right back in. The people are anxious to get out and do the things they do. I can tell you, I live very close to Lake of the Ozarks, just one of the prime recreational areas in the Midwest. It actually doubled the visitation this past year over last year, which was the second best year they ever had in history. So the people are ready to get out. They've got the money to spend. The businesses just have to be open to accept their business. And I think as we see these lockdowns roll off as a result of the vaccinations of people being more widespread and people being more comfortable with going out, I think you'll see our economy pick up quite quickly. Right now, as you know, the taxes are low. We've taken the regs off, and you saw the growth that occurred the first 3 years of the Trump administration. That can continue after we get this COVID problem behind us if we don't strangle it with new rules and regulations and higher taxes.
I've got a question from the audience, but I'm going to ask you very briefly. Slip one more in here. The President Biden, has come in and done an enormous number of executive orders very quickly. A lot of them simply reverse what President Trump had put into place with executive orders. Some of them deal with regulatory fronts on environmental issues. Do you think we're still in the terrain that the message you're sending is, hey, don't get in and re-regulate, don't get in and undo whatever? Has the Biden administration still on the side of the line where that vision you're suggesting can still work? Or do you think they have already, by removing some of the executive orders that Trump had in place, already created problems?
Well, I think they've already created problems from the standpoint of the number of jobs that they're costing with, for instance, just the permitting of the Keystone Pipeline, stopping the construction of the border wall. I mean, those are real jobs, real people who have real families to support. They're necessary construction projects that we have committed to, and now to stop in midstream is going to cost billions and billions of dollars. That is frustrating to me to see that. If you want to tinker around with the economy, let's talk about rules and regulations that can make a difference someplace. But don't go and stop existing projects. If you want to talk about doing a climate agenda, which the president seems hell bent on doing, that's fine. Let's talk about it. But let's don't stop existing projects and cost people jobs and states revenue. This is not the way that you want to try and get the economy up and running and build support for your programs. I'm very disappointed in that. I think hope it's not a precursor of things to come with regards to the administration. But I served for the 8 years that Mr. Biden was vice president. The Obama administration was, quite frankly, awful when it came to rules and regulations. They just strangled our economy. And you look at the last 3 years of their administration, the GDP went down, 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 all 3 years. It tells you that the economic policies they put in place with higher taxes and more regulation were not working. And we're strangling our economy and sending it back into a recession.
Right.
If that happens again, we're going to be in trouble. I'm hopeful that he does not do that and that people will allow him to continue some of the programs that were put together over the past 3 years. The PPP program here is a great safety net for our small businesses. We need to continue to support that and go along with it. But we'll have to see. I'm willing to work with the president, whatever he wants to do to make this a successful economy and keep our people employed and our businesses going at full steam, because they can drive this economy. They've shown that. Steve, we had 1.2 million more jobs than we had people to fill them right before the pandemic hit. That is a measure of success that has never been there in our history of our country. I had a long discussion with Chairman Powell about this one day. And I said, Chairman Powell, your models are off. You realize that, don't you? And he was scratching his head. I said, you've never had a situation where you've had this many jobs out there with people unable to fill them that's a variable you've never put in your models before. Have you? And he admitted that he hadn't. So therefore, the economic models that are out there, if they don't put this sort of variable in there, it's very difficult to project down the road. And so I'm hopeful we can get back to that. I'm excited about the opportunities with this. With the pandemic behind us, I think we've got great things ahead of us. But obviously, you're right. We have a few months here where we've got to batten down the hatches and make sure we get our population vaccinated and safely taken care of.
Well, Congressman, I'm sure your communications team is listening to this right now. I invite you to write that op-ed about what's missing in the variables for the Hill. I think it'd be a great door to open and have that discussion. We have a question from the audience from John. John?
Hello, my name is John Bird. I'm Vice President with Miller Windhold Capital Strategies in Fairfax, Virginia. And my question is, may you please discuss the need for the next White House conference on small business?
Well, maybe that should go to the White House, but what do you think about White House conference on small business?
Yeah, I've attended some of those in the past, and they're really good because what you do is it's a grassroots effort. You get people who are in the trenches. They're the small business people and the lenders who help, and all of the people who deal with them. And as a result, you get a lot of great input. As policymakers, we sometimes think that we know the answers to these problems when we really don't. If you don't listen to the people who are in the trenches every day, who these rules and regulations and taxes affect, you don't really understand the problem and the solutions to those problems. Right. I always tell people who come to my office and say, "Don't bring me your problem, bring me your solutions." I can throw a solution at a problem, but if I don't know the intricacies of your industry, the unintended consequences of my solution, I could do more harm than good. So work with me with your solutions to how we can do this. And these White Hat conferences on small business are great venues for those sorts of discussions to take place. I'm very supportive of those. That's a great idea.
Well, thank you. Well, Representative Blaine Luetkemeyer, thank you so much for joining us and for your candid thoughts, and I hope you'll come back. Thanks so much for joining us and starting our program on small business today.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad that you gave my staff some homework to do there. We appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ron Buzz.